Yeah, the crazy haircut. Okay, so if you were doing something with what we call procedural programming, and that's where we have functions. And the reason why I say procedural programming is because they used to be called procedures. We don't call it functional programming because functional programming in JavaScript means something else. Like using functional programming is using higher order functions. Hey, like map, reduce, filter, all those higher order functions. So I can have my dog bark, I can have my another one dog bark, dog 1 or dog 2, right? And go to this.
I think you have to change this to script.js.
Did I call it? Oh, I did, didn't I? How naughty of me. Minimize this. So here's, oops, got the space now, but here's Toto arf arf and Nala arf arf. Now, if I wanted to have something else where the dogs actually interacted with each other, I'd have to pass in the dogs sort of independently. So like, for example, like dog play. I have to have dog 1 and dog 2 or dog.
Yeah, change it up basically. Yeah, that's a good idea to change it up a bit. So I could.
So the dog that's playing and the dog that's being played with. Console.log dog player.name plays with dog playee.name. Right, so we're going to call it. We're going to pass in our 2 dogs and the dog that's playing and the dog that's being played with. And we're just calling for logging to make it simple. Dog play dog 1, comma dog 2, and I can reverse it. Dog play dog 2, comma dog 1. So Toto plays with Nala, Nala plays with Toto, right? Fairly simple, just passing a pair of objects. But the thing is, I have to pass into these functions this dog player all the time. But in fact, I don't have to pass in, I could pass in any object, not even just a dog object. Like I could say, you know, some other object is equal to, and dude is something. And then I can try to go down here and say dog bark some other object. And what's going to happen is I'm going to get an error. That's a, actually I could, oh, that shouldn't be there. Or at least in this case, a unintentional effect because I passed in a man rather than a dog.
Yes.
Now I could check to see if it's a proper object or has the right thing, but then it gives me problems of actually knowing whether I'm really getting in the right stuff. So this same thing, I'm going to make another one. OOP script.js. And I'm going to take this same stuff, but make it as an object-oriented version of it.
Okay.
So the first thing I need to do is I need to, in some way, shape, or form, create the base object. And now I could do that with object literals. I can do that with a constructor method. I can do that with a module method. There's a lot of different ways of attempting it. I'm going to do it in the more traditional JavaScript sense, which is the constructor method. Also my favorite. So we have function dog, and we usually capitalize the first letter of the constructor to sort of show that it's like a template. It's important in this way. And then I'm going to have in here a new name. And now on my object, it's going to, this is going to make an object. So I'm going to say like var dog1 is equal to new dog. And I won't use this yet since we don't have anything for it. So now, when I go to here, if I look at dog 1, it is a dog object. It even has the name of what it came from. But right now it is nothing. It's just an empty object. So I want to attach, like, for example, what did the old one have? It had a name. So I'm going to put, I could say, like, say just name, var name, and I'm going to set it equal to Toto. Now if I look at this object, there's dog, but unfortunately I can't see anything in it. Now I could go into here and I could put in like a console log of Toto, but I wouldn't be able to see it because this variable is a local variable, right? So I can't see it from outside the scope. You guys understand?
Yeah.
So if I say down here, console.log dog1.name, I get undefined because I can't see it from the outside. Inside, I can say console.log inside object constructor plus name. And that would work, but I can't access it from outside. Well, that's good in some cases, but in other cases, we actually need to like get access, like the methods and such. Like if we can't access it, we can't use it. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to say this dot name. Now you'll notice when I do that, though, inside now it's nothing, but outside it's Toto. That's because inside I still need to address it. I need some way of addressing the object itself. Now I could do in here dog1, potentially, but that only then would work for this one dog. I need a way of saying, well, not this one dog, but whichever dog I am at the moment, whichever code I'm in at the moment. So then that way, if it's Toto, I get Toto, and if it's Nala, I get Nala.
Correct.
So instead what we're going to do is this dot name, which is saying like me, this object, whatever one I'm in. So now we get Toto on both. So now, of course, now every dog's name is Toto because I've hard-coded it into the constructor. I want it to be more variable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass in a variable into the constructor, and I'm going to set that property here. So this dot name is now equal to the new name. So here I'm going to pass in Toto, and here Nala. So I can say console.log dog2.name. I get not Toto and Nala respectively, right? So now every object that I create with this one template, because you saw over here on this one, I had to go and make all of this manually each time. Imagine if it was each object was like 100 lines long. I'd have to have either one thing that I kept duplicating it off of, like for a for loop or something. But in this case, now I can sort of use this factory function to make my objects too. Well, okay, so it's got a name, but it doesn't do anything. We got the other functions down here, but we want to take these functions and we're going to put them into the object.
Okay.
Now I could say inside here that function, like basically almost exactly what it was there. But then it wouldn't be dog.name passed in, it would be this dot name. I don't need to pass in dog because I know exactly which dog I'm in a given time. I don't need to pass it in as a parameter anymore. But I can't call it because it's a local function inside this function, which means I can't get it because of scope. So I have to use this. So I have to say instead this dot dog bark equals a function, an anonymous function.
This.
You
So once you put this online find, it's going to be able to find this dot name.
It's basically like wearing something on the outside. Once you say this dot, what it does is it attaches it to the object as an accessible property or method, as opposed to a local variable or function inside the scope. So it's like almost like putting a window on a container.
Yeah.
Now I can see this thing inside, or it's like a door on the outside. Now I can access it from the outside. So now I can do dog1.dog bark, and I get Toto arf arf. Now the thing is, I know it's a dog bark. I mean, I know it's for a dog because it's in the dog object. So now I can just remove that because it's not. I don't need to make it specific to a dog. It's just barking, and it's in the dog. Therefore, I know it's the dog bark. Same thing now. So I can get it's more specific because I know exactly which object it's in. So I don't need to specify like cat meow or dog bark or anything. It's in a dog, therefore it has to be.
Okay.
Now for questions so far?
No.
You sound like you had one there for a second.
No, I'm okay.
Okay.
I'm okay with this one.
For the other one, for dog play, that had 2 dogs. But this one we already know because it's basically whichever object we're in. So I'm going to take this guy, bring it over here, say this dot, and get rid of the dog part since I know it's a dog. You can get rid of the dog player part because I know that
We already have the dogs.
because it's this dog, right?
Yeah.
Well, now, when I do this, all I have to do is pass in the other object that I'm interacting with. I got here dog playee.name. So I can say, for example, now dog1.play dog2, and I get an error because I'm an idiot. I got to do this.play equals function. Do that a lot.
Dog1.play. Okay. I feel like
Now Toto plays with Nala. But I still have that problem of I can play with an object that I'm not supposed to play with. Where there's like, say, not a name, for example. So I could say dog2.play some other object. I'll get the same problem that I had before. Plays with undefined. But now I can actually be a little more stringent. Hello, sir. On which things I interact with. So up here, for example, I could say, let me see, I'm going to put a debugger here just to show you as I'm going to look at it. OP, put a break statement there. All right. So if I go to here and I say this dot constructor, what I get is the dog function. And if I say this dot constructor dot name, I get dog. So I can say here, if dog playee dot constructor dot name is equal to dog, do this. Otherwise, console.error can only interact with other dogs.
Oh, since where's some other object that right here? Okay, so since the fact that it's actually named some other object, that's not gonna work with it, right?
Well, it has to be made from the right constructor, which in this case, this is the constructor and it's named dog. So we're saying if it wasn't made from the dog constructor, don't interact with it.
Okay, since
then
these
that way
two were made
with the dog
with
constructor.
the constructor,
Okay.
this one wasn't.
Right. So as long as the dog constructor is one you're interacting with, I can say, okay, I only want to interact with the dog, or I can do different things depending upon different objects I'm interacting with. So if I run this, oops, take away the breakpoint. I think something did not work correctly. Oh, because it I gotta get the, what's that other version of it? JS constructor.
Is that what you're doing this weekend, Johnny? Is that what you're doing, the OOP, this weekend?
I was actually working on the project, the group project.
The group project?
Yes.
Actually, I think it says, let's see what it, put the breakpoint back. So this is the first one. So the name. Oh, constructor.
Yeah.
So constructor is dog, name is dog. It's cool, it does the playing. And then next time it comes around, it's our something object. Constructor is a regular object, name is object.
Okay.
And then you can only interact with other dogs.
Okay.
Even if I made it with a constructor. So for example, if I said function dude, new name, even if it had a name, let's say that this dot name is equal to new name. And so down here, I do var dude1 is equal to new dude Dan. I pass in now dude1, even though it was made with constructor, and even though it has a name, when I run it through here, I see that the dog plays this dude object. Its constructor is dude. Its name is of the constructor is dude. That's not dog. I can only interact with other dogs.
Oh, okay.
Or I could even change it. Like for example, else if, oops. This dot name waits for us dog playee dot name us to throw the ball. Now, line 15. Oh, I think I didn't put a
Console.error, maybe?
Yeah, it shouldn't be. This dot name plus. Here's our first one where we have a dog playing with a dog. Toto plays with Nala. Now we have a dog playing with a person, a dude. Goes down to here and plays with it differently. So I can have objects interact with other objects depending upon what type of object they are. in different ways. So our object then can be passed in any number of things, and it knows what that is depending upon what the original object was. This is something we call, well, to an extent, polymorphism, where object behavior can change depending upon which object it's interacting with. You could have done that in regular coding, but then you'd have to know, like, you'd have to have something like type is dude or something like that, and or sorry, this one be dog,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
and type is dog. And type is dude. And I could have that also interacting that way, but then it's, I can't guarantee that it was made with the right thing.
Okay, yeah.
It's a little harder to verify. Now, we oftentimes have objects interact with each other. Another part that people have a hard time understanding is when you have multiple objects, which one, what interacts with what and what way. Now, if we take, make a new one. Let's take something like a situation where there's an obvious like boss and an obvious kind of like worker. So how about traffic lights? So I'm going to make one for a car and driver name. Say this dot driver name is equal howdy equal to driver name. Now this is a local variable driver name is being assigned to the property of the object driver name. And we're gonna have things like this dot go and this dot stop. And then we'll just console.log this dot driver name plus car starts moving. Same thing basically for this one. Stops. If I were to say, okay, var car 1 is equal to new car George, and var car 2 is equal to new car Yelly. Someday I'll get it perfectly right. Then I can say car 1 dot start or go and car 2 dot stop. So George's car starts moving, Yari's car stops. Pretty standard. Now, but though, right, if we just let cars go whenever they wanted to, then we'd have collisions all over the place. So let's put something else in here, like for example, that this dot direction equals east-west or like a direction. And I'm going to put into here something, another one called this dot set direction. I guess I should keep it the same. direction equals a function, and then the new direction goes into this dot direction. So we often have setters and getters. We don't usually modify properties directly on an object in many cases. There's actually a better way of doing the setter and getter that's more enforceable, but it's more advanced, so I'm not going to talk about it yet, but later on we will.
So when you put the parameter new direction equal to this dot direction, that's what you're referring to, setter and getter?
A function that sets this property. So
Okay.
it's set direction, which sets the value or assigns the value to it.
Okay.
And I might then also do this dot get direction, where I just return. The reason for this is that typically we don't want to just directly grab a property from the object. So let's say, for example, that directions were stored as either like 0 or 1. 0 is east, west, and 1 is north, south. Right? So if you just got direction, you get a 1 or a 0, and you may not know how to interact with it. What I can do here is I can say if this dot direction is equal to 1, then return east, west, else return north, south. And the reason we do this is that typically we make the objects, the object knows better how to do its own stuff than other objects do. So we make an object an expert about itself. And then any other objects that interact with it then are doing it so on its terms. So it's sort of like if I ask you to borrow $1, well, you might agree, but then you wouldn't really want me to just reach into your wallet and grab it, because you know which dollar I should get, which one is the least important, or whatever you want to do. So we don't want to just go in and grab the value, because we have no context necessarily for how it's supposed to be used.
Okay.
So I'm going to say car1 dot set. I can do this the same thing here, where I say like if new direction is equal to east, or new direction is equal to west, this dot direction equals 0. Else if new direction is equal to, actually I should probably do this with a switch. Switch new direction case east, case west, this dot direction equals 0, case, and then break. And then case north, case south, this dot direction equals 1, break, and default console dot error invalid direction. Right? So if they give us north, they give us south, they give us east, they give us west, it sets it correctly. So I'm going to say down here, car1 dot set direction east, car2 dot set direction south, what did it say? car1 dot get direction, car1 dot name plus is car is driving plus direction.
Can I look at the get to? Okay, direction. Okay.
Should be a function method. Line 5. Oh, right. It shouldn't be. It should be.
But it's basically just colored. It's, yeah. The jQuery one was the color.
Driving north south. So car1 dot driver name. See, this one I didn't know exactly what it was, so I got it wrong. So I have to know more about the object. So it would be a good one to have, like, if I had a method like get name.
Okay.
But we'll go to that later. So George's car is driving north south.
Okay, can you go back to the code real quick? George is driving. You said north south.
Mhm.
Where did it catch the north from? Is it from?
Well, because I said here that
Right
car.
here.
I got that wrong. I think this should be get direction. That should be 0. Did I put that right? 0 is east west. So yeah, that should be east west, and that should be 1. There it goes, east west.
So you set
So
my car
I set car1's direction to east,
east.
which says direction to east west, and traveling in the east west line. And then the for car2, I set it to south, so I do the same thing. His car is driving north south. Well, so we okay so far?
Go back to the code real quick. So you set her direction to south. Okay, I see. And then you set my direction to east. That makes sense. And then you have to call it. You have to call the function on line 48 and line 49, right?
In this case, yeah. There are ways of doing a getter and setter that I don't have to call a function. But like I said, it's more advanced. We'll talk about that after.
Okay, and can I see the get direction function real quick? Okay, that makes sense.
So, like we said before, that we can't just have cars randomly driving around with no guidance. There has to be some sort of higher authority that tells them when to go, when to stop. So, I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new object called traffic light, and it's going to have to keep track of the cars. So it has to say like this dot cars is equal to something. Well, I'm going to have two different sets of cars. I'm going to have cars that are traveling east-west, and that's going to be an array of cars. And I'm going to have cars that are traveling north-south, and that's an array of cars. So that way the traffic light knows which ones are traveling in east-west direction, and then also knows which ones are traveling in north-south direction. That way it can alternate between them. Good so far?
That makes sense, yes.
Okay. So, and it might have some sort of ID, like this dot ID is equal to, some value, new ID, because there might be multiple traffic lights. So, new ID. And then I would need to add cars to different directions. So like this dot add car is equal to a function, and I'm going to get a car. I need to then look at the car's direction. So I'm going to say, let's say car dir, and it should be underscore. Car dir is equal to car.getDirection, right? If car_dir is equal to east-west, then I want to push it into this .cars east-west .push this car. Else, I want to do basically the same thing.
This cars. W. Okay, that makes sense.
Right. So if the car is traveling east-west, I'm going to push it into the array for east-west traveling cars.
Mhm.
If the car is traveling north-south, I'm going to push it into the array with north-south traveling cars.
Where are you getting just the car?
It's the
CAR.
parameter.
Oh,
up
the
here,
parameter
passing
within there.
function.
Okay.
Right. So I'm
Now-
passing into the function add car on the traffic light, the car that's
being
coming up to
passed.
it.
Now, just by looking at this line 1 through 15,
Mhm.
as of now, this can't get direction yet. Is that right?
Say that again.
This can't look into get direction.
Well, it can, because it'll get it from whatever object it's passed in, right? Because it doesn't matter when the function was defined, it matters when it's used. So as long as I do it like down here, say var traffic light, light 1 is equal to new traffic light, and ID is light 1. And then I'm going to say like traffic light 1 dot add car 1, and then do the same thing with car 2. Now, closer, console.log traffic light 1. So now, in this traffic light, I've got car, which is an object, and inside here is east-west, and then there's my car 1, and that's George's car.
Mhm.
And my north-south array, here's a car, and that's Yeti's car.
Can we go back to the code?
So
Okay,
here,
so this is its own separate function right now,
its
right?
own separate template, it's constructor.
It's construct.
All it does is construct traffic lights.
All it does is construct traffic lights. Okay, and can we go back to the bottom? So variable traffic light 1 equals new traffic light and then light 1. Can you explain that line for me real quick?
Well, you can explain it. What's
Or-
this part doing?
That's just creating a variable,
What type of variable?
an object variable.
No. I mean, that part is true,
Oh,
but what does this part that I'm highlighting do?
just defining or
It does, but it makes a local variable, right?
local
var makes a local variable, just to make sure we're
oh, okay.
completely clear, right? Now, if I just did this, that would run the function traffic light, and whatever traffic light returned, it would put it into traffic light 1.
Mhm.
However, light is returning nothing, so it would return undefined.
Yes,
So traffic light 1 would be undefined. However, we're using the new keyword,
yes.
which actually creates an object based upon the templates. What actually happens is a new object is made.
Mhm.
We go up to here, and we take that object and we add a property called ID. Then we add a property called cars. Then we add a method called add car
Yes.
to that object, that one we just made. And then it's just sitting, it's just waiting. So in this case also, we passed in a property, a parameter, not
Mhm.
argument. And that argument came in up here
Called light
and then was used down here.
yes.
So all this line does is use a constructor to make a new object, assigns it to a variable so we can use it,
Yeah.
and also passed in a parameter to it of light 1, which can be used for anything. Who knows?
Okay.
And then down here, I called the method add car of my traffic light. and then
we just put it as car 1,
I gave it a particular car.
which is
So that comes up to here and then says, well, I am going to look at this car, whatever car it is, and call the get direction method on it, which comes down to this one into this method.
yes.
It looks to see if it's east, south, northwest, whatever, and returns that string, which then puts that string into here, which in this case is east, west. So now car dir is east, west. Let's go through this one line at a time. So we're going to come down to here, and let's just use this and make it bigger. So I'm going to put my breakpoint here.
Okay.
So what happens is we run this function. We come up to here, we attach the property, we attach another property, we attach the method onto the object. So now our object, this traffic light, has an add car. So I'm going to do it one more time. We're going to go into the function, and you can see here that the object has nothing on it. Now it has an ID, which it took the local variable new ID and assigned it the value. It attaches the cars object, which just has 2 objects or 2 arrays in it.
Yeah.
And then it attaches the method add car, and then it's done. So basically the object went into the factory, it got doors and wheels and everything put onto it, and then the thing comes out the other end. So now we come down to here and we call the add car method. So that comes into here and says, well, the car is this car object. Well, now that jumps into that car's copy of get direction. Each one has its own copy.
Yes.
So we come down to here. Now we're inside. If I look at this, I'm no longer in the traffic light. Now I'm in the car. Get east-west. I return that back up to here. And now I'm back in this, which is the traffic light. The car dir is east-west. So it then says, okay, well, this dot car is east-west. I'm going to push the car in question. And now I go into the next one, come back up here again, and now I'm going to go into the other car, Yadi's car. So there's now, when I say this, it's the car, but it's not George's car, it's Yadi's car.
Yeah.
So each of you have a copy of it in your object. Return north-south, come back up to here, pushes it into the north-south array, and then we're done. And then I just console log traffic light. Okay, well, what I want to do is I want to periodically make the light change. So I want to make the light this dot change light. Right. Yeah.
This right here, this array,
Go ahead.
It's calling this one right here, right? Like this one. East west.
Which one?
This.
Yeah.
This one right here
So
is calling.
it's going to this object, which is what? What's this?
This. Referring to which of this right here?
Right, but what is it going to be?
Like.
What type of object will it be?
I don't know.
You don't know.
Yeah.
Say that.
I don't know.
Right. What is it inside of?
It is inside the if statement right now.
Right,
Within
which is
the add
inside
car.
add car, and add car is inside of what?
Add cars within traffic light.
Traffic light. So it will be, this will be whichever traffic light we happen to be in at the time. So every traffic light we make, so like, traffic light 1 will be inside traffic light 1. If we're talking about traffic light 2, this will be traffic light 2, whichever object happens to be the one we're referring to.
Okay. I guess I've never seen this before though. That's kind of like.
Well, because I can't do an object name, I can't do this. This dot cars dot east/west. I can't do that.
But this you can. Okay.
You have seen it before. Remember this? Remember
Okay.
that?
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't do this as a property name
Gotcha.
because this is an illegal character. So I have to access it with brackets to access the property.
Okay. That makes sense.
So this is the traffic light that we're in. Then there's the car's object, which is this thing up here. Then there is the east-west property of the object, which is this guy right here.
Yep.
And then
that's gonna be the value.
which happens to be an array.
Yeah.
So we are then pushing the car into that east-west value.
Sounds good.
All right, so now we're going to periodically change the light. So I need to know which light I'm on at the moment. So I can't change from something until I know what it is. So let's store it in some way, shape, or form. So let's say that this dot direction equals, and then it'll be either 0 or 1. But let's default it to like 0. 0 for east/west, and 1 for north/south, just like the other one. I could even reverse it if I really wanted to, but so whatever I'm at now, I'm going to alternate it to the other one.
Okay.
So I'm going to say that this dot direction is equal to 1 minus this dot direction. What that'll do for me is if this dot direction is 1, 1 minus 1 is 0.
Yes.
So this dot direction will become 0. If this dot direction is 0, 1 minus 0 is 1. So it'll become 1. So it'll just toggle it between 1 and 0, 1 and 0. Now, when that happens, I need to tell all the cars that are going whichever direction to either stop or go, right? So if this dot direction is equal to 1, I'm being very explicit here. I could just say just this dot direction, but I'm just going to equal to 1. You know what I mean by that? So I can say, for example, just this dot direction. Because 1 is a truthy value, therefore it's true. But I'm being much more explicit so there's no confusion.
Yeah, that's actually good right there.
So then I'm going to do is I'm going to say, now I could do, I'm going to do a more explicit. So like var I equals 0, I is less than this dot cars at east/west dot length I plus plus, and then I'm going to tell hello. This dot cars at I to go. Right, so this is going to be a car.
Yeah.
This refers to a car
Specific car.
inside there. So we're talking about the car down here.
Mhm.
So I'm going to tell it to go.
Mhm.
And then I'm going to do the same thing for the other side. I'm going to tell them stop, which is this function right here. And then the opposite for the other direction.
0.
And then I'll just stop, go. So now, over here, assuming it doesn't explode, if I say traffic light 1 dot change, here's what happens when you don't name things consistently, like I'm doing with underscore.
Underscore and capital too.
Yeah, so snake kebab case, whatever the hell it's called. Change light. Okay, I got change light of undefined. Did I not refresh it that way? Yeah, probably. Take off the breakpoint. Console. Okay, I got error here. Change light of undefined. Let me check my traffic light. Oh, I haven't made it.
Why?
Traffic light 1. That's the right one. Oh, wait. Maybe because that's why it hadn't. It was the breakpoint. We hadn't actually gone
Oh, okay.
to the next part. Traffic light 1. There's our object. Okay.
Okay.
So dot change light. Oops. Light. George's car starts moving. Yachty's car stops. I do it again. Now George's car stopped. Yachty's car starts moving.
Okay.
Back and forth. Back and forth. Back and forth.
Okay.
So now the traffic light is telling the cars what to do, but not how to do it.
Mhm.
It actually has to go into the method for the car, and then the car decides how it's going to do it.
Yeah.
So let's say, for example, that the car had a speed. Let's say this dot speed equals 0, and then I'm not going to make a bunch of setter and getters for it. We might do that. But what we'll do down here is stop is if this dot speed is greater than 60, else console.log this dot driver name plus car screeches to a halt, right? Because it's traveling fast.
Mhm.
And then down here, we're going to say, George, you check me as a speed demon.
Mm-hmm.
Equals 62. And Yachty, I would assume that you drive slowly. Although that might be patently false. Then if I go back to this, Yachty's car stops. George's car screeches to a halt. Even though they're both stopping,
Mhm.
they know how to deal with things because it's defined within their object. The
Mhm.
traffic light doesn't know how to do it because it doesn't know, like, your car might be a faster one or a slower one. It could be any number of things, and it could change over time.
Mhm.
So all it does is tell the car to stop. Just like in real life, all a traffic light does is tell you, put a red light on, and then you decide how to stop or
Mhm.
even not stop. But it doesn't wire to your car to suddenly press the brake. So now I can go back to here and even do something like a little bit of an automation to it, and say this dot heartbeat
Oh, that's cool.
equals function, and then I'm going to say actually I want to do start heartbeat. Start heartbeat. I need a timer, so I'm going to say this dot timer ID equals null, and I'm going to put down here this dot timer ID equals set interval, and I want to call this dot change light, and I want to do it every 5 seconds. And then this dot stop heartbeat equals function. I'm going to say clear interval this dot timer ID, because I want to be able to stop the light from changing as well. And that means I also want to do this is this dot stop heartbeat. I should really keep that staying. That way I clear, if I've already got one running, I stop it,
Mhm.
and then I start another one. That way I don't have 2 heartbeats going potentially at the same time.
Okay.
If I did start heartbeat like 5 times, without that, I would then start 5 different ones going, and I wouldn't have any way of stopping the old ones. So you okay with that?
For are you referring to line 37?
Yes. Yeah. So it'll always stop the previous one before it starts the next one.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, yes.
All else we do is this dot timer ID is equal to null, just so I know that it's cleared.
Hello.
Howdy. Okay. So now I don't necessarily know from the outside world what might be entailed and how this thing works. So we usually have very common outside functions, like for example, this dot initialize. I'm going to say in here, this dot start heartbeat. Because it may or may not, I mean, you might be able to read it and figure out that it is start heartbeat, but it's a lot easier to say, oh, initialize. Okay, this is what I should do when it starts.
Okay.
I would have to kind of guess that start heartbeat is really what it needs to do at the beginning. And there might be a lot of things that I run. I'm also going to put up here of, I could put like a console log of console.log. The light becomes green for east/west.
You turn a bit more. I think you turn.
But what I really want to do is I'm going to have a report here. So this dot report condition equals function. And do this. I'm going to say its own name. So oops, plus this dot ID. The light becomes green for east/west. And then I'm actually going to say I'm going to do a ternary just to make it a little quicker. This dot direction equals 1. It's east/west or it's north/south.
Okay.
So if this is true, it'll return this part over to here.
Mhm.
It should be a plus. Or if it's false, it'll return this part over to here.
Okay.
And then down here, I'm going to say this dot report condition.
You're
So it
call
does
function.
within itself. So it loads. And then I need to call traffic light 1 dot initialize. And then it should. Okay, so this report condition is not a function. So what's going on here is that it's saying that it's not a function on line 22. Well, let's put a breakpoint here on line 22 and see what's going on. So when I start it up, I'm going to lower the time up so it's a little quicker to generate that error. We don't have to wait 5 seconds. And then go here, initialize. So we're here. Okay, well, they said that report condition is not a function.
Mhm.
Well, what that usually means is not that report condition is not a function, but what you're trying to do it of is undefined. Well, this is the window. What should it be?
It should be
Not the car,
Oh, the
because we're inside
the top one, which is traffic
the
light.
traffic light.
Yeah.
Well, what happened was when we did set interval,
Mhm.
it bound, or it called it from the reference of the window.
So
Set interval is defined in the window.
this is when you do bar self equals this.
You can, but that's kind of there's downsides to that. So let's do that first to show it. So I'm going to say, for example, up here, var self equals this. What I basically do is I take a snapshot. Right at the moment I hit that line, I look at what this is, which is going to be the traffic light,
Mhm.
and I put it into the variable self. And then down here, I can look at, for example, like self.
Oh yeah, Scott was telling us to do that, right?
So now, when I get to this point where I have it,
Oh,
oh, that's got the, oh, we got to move this down. That's why. This should be here. Okay. So now self is the traffic light. But there are problems with this approach. For example, when I try to do prototypes,
Mhm.
this won't be available to me. The self won't be available to me
Oh,
because
okay.
it's a local variable inside this function,
Mhm.
and the prototype is actually higher up on the chain. In this case, the prototype chain. It won't be able to access that. Also means I have to rename a bunch of them to self instead of this. So instead of using this the method of self, I'm going to do bind. I'm going to change these back to this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, instead of just this dot change light, I'm going to say this dot change light dot bind this. What bind does is it takes the function call and it wraps it in a basically like a closure. It
Okay.
redefines what this is inside that function call. So where this dot change light would be executed from would be from within set interval, and set intervals this would normally be the window. However, now
Oh, I
I'm
see.
telling it to say that this is actually what this is on line 43, which is the traffic light.
You're
So
basically like you're redirecting it. That's what you're doing.
yeah, I'm changing it to something else.
Okay.
So now I'm here to initialize. This is the traffic light. It's a lot more useful. It's a little harder to understand. I mean, honestly, I know because it took me like 3 times of attempting to teach it before I even started to start understanding this.
Yeah.
But basically it takes, rather than this dot change light, it takes that whole function and makes like an anonymous function, but now that anonymous function is bound to the this that I specify, not some other this. And it's this object here. So if I, for example, if I say var my traffic light equals this, and I said down over here my traffic light, it's a little, I think it's a little easier to understand than in that case. Like I'm binding it to the object of traffic light that I'm in at the moment. Because if I'm saying like, well, this dot change light dot bind this, that tends to be a little confusing for new programmers.
So you're gonna leave it like this for right now, my traffic light.
Right, just to make it easier for you guys to understand.
Okay.
Like the traffic light that I am at the time, which is just merely what this is on this line here, which
Yes.
in that case is the traffic light. So I will go and show you that right here. So here, this is the traffic light. Now I'm saying that my traffic light is equal to this, so it's basically it's a traffic light still. And then I'm saying that this change light, which is this traffic light's change light function, is now bound to that traffic light in question.
Okay.
I could even bind it to other traffic lights if I really wanted to, but that'd be confusing. So now I'm going to undo the breakpoint. And now they
Okay.
start.
Every second. Okay.
I think I also got to do that north-south is happening on line 18. That's interesting. Why is that happening? Oh, I got to do this. That's why. It's taking the entire thing and sort of wiping it out. It was taking this entire thing
Uh-huh.
as the conditional if it's equal to 1, basically.
Oh, okay.
Like it was taking this plus this first
Mhm.
because I didn't have the parenthesis there. Now I'm saying, no, do this first
Oh,
and
I
then
see.
tack it onto there.
Did you reload or?
Yeah.
Light.
Yeah, so the green for east, west, north, south, east,
Gotcha.
west,
Mhm.
north, south, east, west, north, south, right? And of course, it's the same car
Yes.
over and over again, but
Mhm.
we're just doing it as
That's
a basic example. So you can kind of understand now, and I can now then do dot stop heartbeat, and it stops it from going.
Okay.
And would you be able to Slack this to me? I would
I'm
like
going
to.
to post it and then give you the link and such.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So it shows you how a boss object effectively can interact with sub objects, and it does so not by directly changing them,
Mhm.
but by calling methods in those functions, and then those ones
Yeah.
then interact with it. Now, for example, I could also add something like, for example, like here in the go and stop, I could say like, okay, if it actually stops, what it could then say is it could report back to the traffic light that it actually did stop.
Mhm.
And if it doesn't report back to the traffic light that it did stop within a certain amount of time, then I could have the traffic light do like take picture of violator, like he's because he's burning through the red light, right? So the car would report back saying like, hey, I stopped. Now the reason why we have it, sort of like it feels like kind of like the honor system, because it is. Our objects are supposed to behave in predictable ways. Now the driver of the car, if there was like a game, he may decide to stop or not stop. But then what would be happening behind the scenes is that the car would tell the traffic light, by the way, I didn't stop.
Gotcha.
Even though the driver in real life wouldn't tell the traffic light anything, but it would be able to see it. But because we're programming all this, we're abstracting this concept, the car would then say, I got it, but I'm not stopping. Or I got it, I am stopping.
Gotcha.
And then report back to the traffic light, and the traffic light would do something based on that. It may even do, like, for example, the car may check periodically if it should stop, and then the traffic light would say, nope, you're fine, keep going. Or no, you should stop. You can do it in a lot of different ways. But either way, you're having sub-objects interacting with like a master object. And this is kind of the crux of things like MVC, where the C stands for controller. And so the model and the view, the model handles the data, the view handles like the display of the data and the input from the user, and then the controller dictates what happens.
Okay.
Oh, I got input from the user. Hey, model, update your data with the data he gave me. Okay, cool. I got new data from the database. Let's take that data and display it on the view. Okay, view, you display this data. So the controller acts as like a traffic cop for those objects.
Gotcha.
Okay?
It's pretty cool.
All right, so
Can we go over prototype?
sure. Okay, so sometimes, and a lot of times actually, the problem with this layout is that every object, if I look at the traffic light, for example, this got traffic light, it actually has, it actually has all of these things in it. But if you notice down here, there's this weird little thing called underscore underscore proto underscore underscore. And it's got like the constructor and like nothing else.
Yeah.
Well, what this is a sort of ancestor object.
Okay.
So it's not like saying like it's, for example, here's the yada object, here's your grandma. But it's more like the master template object that makes all of this. In this case, the prototype of the traffic light. So what a prototype does is it allows you to have properties and methods, usually only methods though. We can only use it for methods usually, that are available to the children objects. However, they're not actually in the child object.
Okay.
So for example, I can say, car.prototype.turn on radio equals function. And I can console.log. Let's say this dot driver name. Yeah, driver name plus turns on the radio.
Mhm.
And when I go into here, I say, for example, car1 dot turn on radio. See, it's a method available.
Mhm.
George turns on the radio.
Okay.
Car2 turns on the radio. Now, one thing that makes a difference is if you're having a hard time seeing what something is a part of, like you were having a hard time seeing that, especially if you get further down, like, okay, great, we're in this start heartbeat, but what's that a part of? Oh, I have to scroll up here and see,
Yes.
okay, it's in
Mhm.
traffic light. One thing that makes it nice is that here I can see now this is definitely part of car.
Mhm.
Car.prototype turn on radio. And if I say car1, though, there is no turn on radio.
Mhm.
However, if I go to the prototype, there's turn on radio.
Okay.
So now every object has access to this. So for example, car2 also has access to turn on radio.
Mhm.
So for example, I could say, for example, something like car1.lowRide equals function console.log this.driver name plus bounces up and down. But notice I did it directly to car1. Actually, I gotta do it below when I make car1.
Mhm.
And I didn't use prototype at all.
Mhm.
So now, when I say car1, I can see that it has low ride, but car2 does not,
Okay.
because I added it directly to the object. This is what we call I forget the term, but
So
it's basically constructing by appending and tacking on things onto it.
So with car prototype, and now I'm able to access. Every car is able to access.
Every
that.
car is able to access it, even if I make it afterwards. Watch this. So even though I can go down to here, car1 dot
I think you
One goes.
deleted bar car1.
that's fine.
Oh, that's fine. Oh.
Did I? Oh, you're right, I did. That's good eye. Console.log car1.explode plus car1.explode. And then down here I can say car.prototype dot explode is equal to function
Mhm.
console.log kaboom and console log out. Same thing again.
Yeah.
So here it's undefined, and here it's the function. It got added after the fact, and even car2 has explode. So I can add it to all objects that are of this type retroactively.
Okay, so what prototype does is it adds method to the factory.
To the factory of the factory,
To the
basically. So
Okay.
it'd be like if, for example, let's say I took your family and you're like, you know what, you really want blue eyes.
Mhm.
So you somehow go back in time to like your ancestor and add blue eyes to them, so every person down the line has the possibility of having blue eyes.
Okay.
That's really what you're doing, is you're going to the ancestor of your mother or father
Mhm.
and making this change.
Okay.
but in a more basic level than that. Now, the other thing is, because it is in the prototype,
Mhm.
it's not taking up memory.
Oh.
Not, at least not more memory. So I could make 100,000 cars,
Uh-huh.
and each of them would have a copy of get direction,
Mhm.
which means that for however many bytes get direction is, let's say it was 30 bytes.
Okay.
Mhm.
That's 30 times 100,000 or 300,000 bytes of memory.
Mhm.
But this one, let's say it was also 30 bytes.
Mhm.
No matter how many cars I have, it only takes up 30 bytes because everyone references the same thing. It's like having a boat that everyone in your family can use, but in this case, everyone can use it simultaneously in different places. Like making I can just make a copy of it whenever I want and use it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So those are some of the things about prototype. Also, I can redefine functions. If I make a function here, like .stop,
Mhm.
I cannot redefine stop to be something else after the fact,
Mhm.
unless I do it on. I can't do it for every object because I'd have to do it for each object.
Okay.
I can't change the prototype. Like for example, car.stop or prototype. Let me do this down here. Car.prototype.stop is equal to a function. Console.log. No breaks. However, that will not change anything.
Oh.
Because if you go to car one, here's stop,
Mhm.
and here's the one we just made
Mhm.
stop. But this one is overlapping this one.
Yeah.
So I can't change it.
Mhm.
However, I could call it in addition. So for example, I could go to this stop and say this dot proto dot stop. Then if I say, I didn't like that one. Prototype maybe? I don't think that's gonna work. There's a way to do it. I'll have to remember how to do it. If I can access like the prototypal one in addition. However, if I mapped stop to prototype in the beginning, like if I set up here, like this car.prototype.stop,
Mhm.
then I could redefine it again down here. So I could say like halt, and then I can say car.prototype.halt is equal to a new function.
Mhm.
Braking is for chumps.
Mhm.
Right, so now since they're on the same level, I can redefine it.
Okay.
But I couldn't overlap a function
Mhm.
that was made in the constructor because that's actually directly on the object, and that would overlap
Mhm.
the prototype one.
Yeah.
So if you want to use prototypes, oftentimes we use it for pretty much everything. Okay?
So the reason why we use prototype is because we want to access the method of the ancestor.
We want to attach the method
Attach.
onto the prototypal ancestor.
Uh-huh.
That way, every object that derives itself from that prototype
Mhm.
would also get that method.
Mhm. Okay.
Like I could also say something like okay, mind blown time. I don't know if I can take it though. Function truck this dot prototype is equal to car dot prototype. I'm a little fuzzier on this, so let's
Okay.
give it a shot. Var truck1 is equal to new truck. And let's just see what if anything explodes first. Truck1, and it's prototype. And that's not it. There's something like set prototype. But here I can, for example, see here's explode, halt, and turn on radio.
Yeah.
So I could have like, there's a right way to do this. I'm not quite doing it right, but you can make a like vehicle object, and it would have things like go and stop and all the things that vehicles can do. And then truck would tack onto that something like this dot load cargo,
Yeah.
which a car couldn't do. So we could make then a progenitor object that's like a vehicle, which does like go, stop, people get into it, loads fuel, all that stuff.
Okay.
And then I can have a car which loads passengers, and then I can have a truck which loads cargo. And then I can have like a common object that then gives its properties to everything down below it. But like I said, I don't do that often, so I have to get a little bit better at it before I can describe it to you guys.
Sounds good. I have a,
But at least I could then like say like, oh, I need to access it on the prototype, but I'll show you the right way soon.
you had we had talked that like you wanted me to focus more like on like like more like JavaScript for right now. Like I know that we're supposed to learn a lot of back end today with you. Like, would you rather me like work on stuff like this rather than do back end for now, or